Welcome to the next workshop in HackFS. If you're joining the POAP Introduction to the POAP API workshop with Nisita Tappata, you are at the right place. This is a 30-minute workshop. It's streamed onto YouTube and recorded there later if you want to get the content afterwards. It'll be posted shortly after. Feel free to enter your questions in the chat here, or we can make this interactive and you can just sort of chime in on your audio if you have a pertinent question you'd like to ask as the workshop proceeds. Again, it's 30 minutes. And with that, I will open it up to Nisita to begin.
Hey, thank you. Really appreciate it. Super excited to be here and share a little bit more about POAP and, hopefully looking forward to some really cool ideas coming out of this. The way I wanted to structure this conversation today is, just talk about generally what POAP is and kind of work our way through it. And, if there's any questions, obviously feel free to chime in there. So in terms of what POAP is a digital collectible minted in celebration of life's remarkable moments. POAPs are really gifts from issuers to collectors. And issuers could be each of us individually, it could be teams, it could be organizations, much more. I think most folks might have interacted with POAPs. If not, I would highly encourage, giving it a try, just to understand the mechanics and that sort of stuff. I'll sort of go into the, how does it really work behind this, behind the scenes? And, I like to break it into like two parts in my mind. And, part one is there's two key main personas, or maybe let's talk about a personas. One is the issuer, whether it's an individual or an organization, who generally is the individual or entity that creates and distributes the POAPs. So basically, these are folks that would say, hey, I'd love to be able to create this POAP because I want to be able to celebrate this, whether it's because it's a birthday, it's an event, it's a concert, it could be any number of things that are considered really precious and memorable. And that's really how I would think about an issuer in terms of that persona. And the second one is a collector. I think most of us, well, at least I would hope that everybody's had a chance to be a collector at some point. We're usually on the receiving end of it, in that, we're the gift receivers or the POAP receivers and collectors. Generally, it's an individual. Well, not generally, mostly it's an individual, a human being. That's kind of the easy way to think about it, and how I think of it anyways. And part two, and this kind of gets into the details, think of it like behind the curtain view of like, what exactly happens when somebody decides, hey, I'd love to be able to create a POAP or create an event, and all the way in between to someone being able to receive a POAP at the end of the day. Couple of different pieces, and I hope you're going to be patient with my creative little drawing. I was trying to figure out, I'm like, what's the best way to explain this? I figured, a doodle is always helpful, and a little bit of chicken scratch to go with that. So first of all, an issuer would create an event. That would be an individual or an entity, however that is. And the events can be created, in this case, because we're talking the API specifically, actually you can do that through our API. The second piece would be, that what happens once that request gets pushed in is, it actually, you would be, the request then gets to, our POAPs curation body, who actually receive and review each of these requests, and to make sure, hey, this is aligned with our overall ethos and values, and a couple of other things, and then they'll make a decision. Once that decision is made and that review is complete, provided that it's, it's approved, the issuer, being, let's say you or I, that would have created this event, would get a response with, here's a bunch of POAPs that you can now distribute to your friends and family or community, or folks that you want to share this memory with. That's kind of the cyclical nature of how I think of it. And that's when, once the issuer gets those lists of POAPs, they are then able to share that with the collector as almost like a gift. And there's multiple ways of how you can, or how one can go about distributing these. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the next one. So, whoops, okay, somehow. There we go. So there's multiple different distribution methods. The simplest way I generally like to think of it is I like to break them into two main buckets. One is, an ability to really be able to distribute each of those POAPs. Again, think of it as a gift, like literally a box that you're thinking, okay, who do I want to give this to? And every person that walks into my birthday party, and I've met them and I said, hey, I've greeted them, whatever the case is, and I would hand them a goodie bag almost like that, because a couple of things are happening when you're doing that. You're validating that they were actually there before you give it to them. So that's the unique and single access bucket, I think of it. And the second bucket is what I'm calling, the general access. To think about that a little bit, we'll kind of jump into the next slide. So this one, I think we saw the first one, which you see the images of, individual people with boxes giving it to individual collectors, that box back to them. So it's a one-to-one relationship, as opposed to the general access. The analogy I like to think of is like, accessing a factory of POAPs. So let's say I have a factory or a room full of POAPs and or gifts or, goodie bags. And I'm then saying, okay, folks, everybody that came to my birthday party, if you go to this address and you enter this PIN number in, you can go in and kind of self-serve, like, pick up your goodie bag or your gift, and you can go on about your merry way. That works in some cases, and in some cases, not so much, depending on the trust of the community you're dealing with. Because in some cases, let's say for any number of reasons, I decide, hey, I want to share this information with my friend. What happens then is, although they weren't actually at the event, although they weren't part of this memory and this experience, they can still get one. So that's not really in line with, I think, the type of experience we want to have. So I wanted to call those two different distribution methods because it'll sort of come up at a later point in terms of, thinking about quality of how do we do this in a thoughtful and a mindful way, that sort of pieces. But I think it's always important to kind of starting with the basics, and we can kind of build on top of that. So that's my general, I'm going to say, presentation from this perspective. And I'm kind of going to go over and talk through most of the next bit of stuff. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to chime in. It's a great time to. There's also a bunch of links that were also provided. So I would also highly encourage reading those. Kind of getting a little bit more specifically into the API. So our API, if you're interacting with the API, honestly, you don't need to worry about if you're compatible with a specific chain or not, or any of that. It's very straightforward, at least I like to think that, and I'd love to get feedback in terms of that's not the case. Another thing I would say is, as we were talking about events and POAPs, I think one thing it's fair to call out here is, what is the structure? So when there's an event, so let's say that birthday event I was talking about, so the relationship between one event is one event to many POAPs. So it's a one-to-many. So if you're trying to build out certain use cases, example being you want to do token gating as an example, then you probably want to token gate at the event level, because then it allows you to be able to token gate for all of the individual POAPs within that collection. That's kind of how I would think of it. And I'm trying to go through my notes real quickly. Another one I think it's fair to call out is, and you'll see all of this in the API documentation, but I'll call it out anyways, is the token IDs are a 6-digit alphanumeric aspect. So I think just be mindful of that, because once you get a return of the bunch of IDs, you probably are wondering what the heck is this. So we also call them like QR hashes. That's also another term that's used to refer to these token IDs in our documentation. Couple of other things in terms of distribution, because I think generally, again, contextual, not specific to the API necessarily, but I think this is where there's an opportunity is, as you're thinking about the different use cases or ideas you'd like to build out, distributions is one of the things that I think is equally important, like all the different parts within the ecosystem, primarily because how you distribute will also deliver, are we being mindful? Are we being thoughtful? Are we just kind of giving people access to that general factory approach? Are we, thinking through, hey, this individual was actually there and we're validating that, and then we're sharing that. So there's some opportunity there to play with in terms of, examples are maybe, or certain examples we've seen, I should say, are like a Discord bot or like a Twitter bot that validates, okay, person A was actually there, and because they did X, Y, and Z, and therefore, we're going to be able to allow them to have this POAP as an example. So that's on the distribution side of things. And some other ideas, just wanted to share to get the ball rolling, so to speak, is new token delivery methods. We just talked about, distribution, whether it's on WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal or any number of communication channels, really. So it would be really interesting to see something like that, or real-time on-chain analytics activity. That would be really cool as well. Another thing would be like the social charter explorer. So for example, finding people with similar POAPs. So in my mind, I would think of it as, I don't know, let's say I went to X, Y, and Z events in the past, whether they're real life and or, virtual exercises. And let's say I collected X number of POAPs. I would love to be able to meet someone that actually has been at the same place at the same time, whether it was virtual or in IRL. Because think about like the chances that you and another person or you and a group of people were there, but never actually had a chance to connect with each other. And would you be interested? I mean, I personally would be really, really curious to kind of get to know them. And, because maybe if we've already had so many things in common, maybe there's quite a high likelihood I might actually like this individual and would want to be friends with them, right? So I think those are some that kind of come top of mind. Other plugins, any sort of things. A couple of other things that come to mind is like treasure hunt. So whether that's like gamifying certain things and being able to offer things, or location aware systems. So if it's a NFC approach or Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, other things that you can leverage to be able to identify you were there to prove that you're actually there, not just because you clicked on a link, but in addition to clicking on a link, you were there because of X, Y, and Z. I think those things are kind of interesting and neat to explore a little further. Distributions also within the metaverse, I think that's a pretty broad kind of category in itself. There's lots of options there, but obviously there's tons of room for more. I'm going to pause really quickly to see if there's any questions. Okay, no questions. Awesome.
And no questions in the chat at the moment, but everyone feel free, put them in the chat.
Oh, lots. Okay, all right, there they are. Yeah, I mean, you could do a POAP or a workshop like this because you were part of this exercise. And I mean, that's a great example. Where can we find the API? So it's documentation.poap.tech. So that's the actual URL. Or if you go to the POAP Discord page, it's also there. It's listed there. It's also listed on the ETHGlobal, like the events page, or rather I don't know what the right term is, like where it actually shows what the prizes is and the structure and all of those pieces. It's also there as well. So currently, POAPs are minted to like one contract. So I don't know if that's what the question is. Okay, any other questions? If not, I can kind of go into a little bit of describing what the POAP document. Oh, well, can you expand on that in terms of can we have cross-chain POAPs? So POAPs are actually minted on Gnosis today. However, you can actually migrate them to mainnet. I'm not sure if that answers the question. I hope so. If not, please do help. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Earl. Can you access the API? Absolutely, yes. Thank you. That was actually one of the things I wanted to. So in order to access our API, actually, you know what? I think I can type here. So documentation.poap.tech. Sorry, not docs. There we go. That's maybe the other one will also direct folks. Can we access the API for Hackathon? Yes. So the way we've set it up is folks need to have access, or folks need access to an API key to access our API. And the way we're going to do this is once folks have registered for the POAP Hackathon or the POAP aspect of it, within the POAP channel, we'll actually distribute the API keys there. So then folks will have the API keys and you can kind of run with it. But I would encourage, if you're kind of curious and want to get into it, take a look at the documentation, because you might have other questions even after this workshop. And if so, please feel free to engage us, and we're happy to kind of dig a little bit deeper and share more information. One of the things it's probably worth calling out within the documentation is you'll notice that there's an area within the documentation that basically says something to the effect of like popular flows. So that actually shows you step by step of some of the use cases that you can really use, almost like in a step-by-step way, obviously. So it'll say, hey, you need an API key, or if you need something additional, it'll talk about it right there. It will also say, here's the exact endpoint you need to use for this specific type of use case. But by all means, you're not limited to those use cases. Feel free to explore all the other use cases under API references in the same documentation on the top right part. Because what that will give you is you can go explore all the different things. You'll probably come up with a lot more use cases that we weren't able to think about today, and that's what we're really excited about. Any other questions? If not, I will talk a little bit about, so API also has the public keys, as well as a few of them are private. So the public, sorry, not public keys. So API has public endpoints and protected endpoints, or secure endpoints. So the public endpoints are the ones that you will be able to access using the API keys that will be provided from the Discord channel. If you find that as you're exploring your use case and your idea, you find that some of the endpoints that you'd like to use, and those are protected endpoints, just honestly reach out to us, because we can help provide you the authentication tokens, which will help you then get the bearer token to have access to the protected endpoints, because the protected endpoints have some sensitivity associated to it. So we sort of have them as like a separate category almost, in order for you to access that. We just need you to have access to the auth tokens that will give you the bearer token. And this is also documented in the, so there's an example within our documentation of how, like, once you get, let's say, the client ID, once you get the audience, and once you get the client secret, how do you actually then get a bearer token? There's an example of that as well. Are protected endpoint API in public documentation? Yes, they are. So there's actually no delineation once you look at the documentation, there's actually no delineation that says this is public or protected. But one way you can find out is there is a part on the right-hand side once you're in the documentation that allows you to do like a trial, so to speak. And then that's where it'll say what you need. If it says you need a bearer token, that's referring to that endpoint being a protected endpoint, and therefore you would need to request for auth tokens. What is the minimum criteria to be eligible for the prize? It's a great question. I think it depends on which prize, because there's multiple options. I think the criteria is there is a working solution that we're able to test out, and that's kind of the starting point. But obviously, I think we can probably share more details around that in the Discord channel. Is POAP open source? Yeah, it's completely open. Well, the public endpoints are completely open today, and you can pretty much go in and play around with the API. Is there a GitHub repo? That's a great question. Let me actually follow up if that's okay. I'll follow up in the Discord channel with that. But we have found that most of the information is available within our API documentation, but I'll definitely follow up on that one specifically, just to make sure we're providing that. Any other folks? Okay. This is a very cooperative crowd. I really appreciate it, folks. Thank you for your time. I'm trying to think through if there's any other cool things that we've seen. So when you go into the popular use cases, that's a really interesting place. Somebody found it. Thank you, Ruben. Saved me time. I appreciate that. I think in terms of the popular use cases, obviously those are pretty straightforward, but I would generally say, go for it. Try like your wildest imagination you possibly can. Things I literally can't even think about. That's what I'm excited to see. And honestly, I think it'll be a really, really interesting thing to see how it sort of evolves and what sort of ideas bubble up. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can share the questions now, but later works completely fine and soon. So happy to, my DMs are open as well, and or within the POAP Discord channel. We're all there. We're happy to answer any questions. Any other folks? One maybe topic worth kind of calling out is, so we do have a fair bit of like challenge. I think this is generally everybody, not just us specifically, with farming and bots. So if there's any ideas or anyone thinking about that actively, because this is the thing that like gets you excited and you're super passionate about, we'd love to see those as well, because I think there's a lot of room to find really cool ways to, you know, not just to captcha or, you know, the stuff that we've seen for a while, but things that you can creatively think about that would really help us ensure the quality of the ecosystem. I think that would be something that there's a little bit more to explore in that area. Look at the next question. So how does the POAP ecosystem generate revenue if they are free to mint and exchange? From what I understand, I have a few from events and I barely know what to do with them. Okay, step one, what to do with them. So once you, I mean, I think that the initial starting point, just like myself, I think most of us here collect POAPs because there is like a memory associated to it, really, as opposed to like having a monetary value assigned to it. I think that, well, at least that's why I think most people generally collect them, because they're really cool collectibles. Having said that, the other really cool thing is some of the applications that are, well, call it like applications, call it something else, but basically there's more fun and utility that's actually enabled once you get your POAP. So I'll give you an example. So let's say I went to support my favorite artist who was just starting out, and I was on, you know, I was there to support them on their day one sort of exercise. And 5 years later, or maybe a year later, or maybe even 2 months later, they blow up, and you know they're completely at the top of their trajectory, so to speak, and they're, you know, doing some really, really great stuff. But they might decide, hey, I would really love to be able to support and or, you know, reward the folks that were there on my day one, because, you know, like it was a journey, and I'm just grateful for the folks that have been supporting me all the way through to get to where I am today. So they can actually do that because they can, in theory, token gate it. So let's say if this artist was doing apparel for the sake of the conversation, and what they can do, and let's say I'm just picking a random platform. So let's say they have a Shopify store for the sake of the conversation. What they can actually do is they can set it up such that anybody that has that POAP from their, like, you know, early days, if they've collected it, so some of the cool stuff that you might have collected, you know, that maybe 2 months from now or at some point, would actually enable you to get like 15% off on their merch store. I'm just using that as an example, by the way. Or it might actually give you access to like seasons passes for something. Again, like it really depends on how an artist or a community or a company might want to be able to reward their communities. It's a really cool way to, you know, stay engaged and stay involved with folks and your community, even after, like, you know, some point in time has elapsed. Because having a POAP, what it allows is it actually lays the foundation for an individual to be able to have access to continuation of that moment, because I was part of this on a specific point in time, specific time and place. And that means if I was at a concert, maybe that's it, that's an example. So I was at a concert and, you know, there's an extension of it, there's an after party, and they're completely in two different places. But if I got a POAP at this concert, when I go to this this after party, all I need is like my POAP to show, because I mean, it is proof of attendance. It's proof of attendance of this concert, as an example. I would, you know, that would allow me access, whether it's directly walking in or whether it's being able to download an invitation, whatever that looks like, you know, that flow could be different, but it fundamentally enables you access to a continuation of that moment that you've already had and that you were part of. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, I'll quickly dip on this one. So I'm going to read this out, so then I'm not just looking quiet. cool, thanks for the response. Haven't looked at the docs, but are the POAPs searchable by looking at ETHwallets? Do POAP addresses have unique identifiers? They're on ETHwallets, absolutely. So if you, so another cool thing I will call out is if you are searching for, let's say, somebody's wallet, you can search for it by their public wallet address or their ENS, and you would be able to see the POAPs, provided that whatever platform you're on allows you to be able to see POAPs. So if they have an integration, already an existing integration, and I'll name drop somebody. So Rainbow Wallet as an example, they allow you to actually see natively POAPs within the wallet. So once you have your ETH wallet connected, you can actually see your POAP collection, which is really, really neat. So there's a couple of others out there that do similar things. So yes, absolutely. And even in terms of, awesome, one other thing I'll call out is, so if, let's say you have someone you're trying to get to get a POAP, so they don't even have to have a wallet on, like, when they're trying to actually get onboarded to use it or collecting a POAP, because you can do that using your public wallet address, or you can do that with your ENS and or your email address. We understand that, folks are at different parts of their journey, and we want to make it easy. We don't want to add too much friction to allow people to still be able to collect a cool collectible that they have a memory association to. So they can definitely do that using an email. However, at any point in time, they're not actually minting it using an email. They're just registering it using an email. And once they decide at some later point in time, whatever that may be, or whenever that may be, they decide, hey, I'd love to be able to actually, now set up a wallet, and they can totally have all of the POAPs they have registered to their email go into their wallet. They can totally do that. Next question, do you already see a QR code in a POAP? I'm not completely sure what that means, but I'm gonna guess, and maybe you can type up a follow-up if what I'm thinking is incorrect. So if I'm trying to provide or offer a POAP to somebody because they've met me, or we were part of some experience and I was the issuer, then can I do that using a QR code? The answer is yes. I think it means the QR code inside the art or image. Oh, interesting. I've actually not seen that. Just to scan and verify someone reached a place, for instance. Yes. So let's say in order for me to distribute a POAP, absolutely, you can just have a QR code. There's actually two types, I would say. There's the static QR code, which, I mean, as the name sounds, it's static. So you can scan it and they get a QR code, a POAP from it. Or the other is the dynamic. That one I would generally recommend more so. And the reason I say that is because even if somebody wanted to, I scan my first, or let's say there's three of us in a line, and the first one scans the QR code. And by the time the second person comes, there's a new QR code. And the third person comes, another one pops up because it just expires. It's almost like a rotation. Well, it's not a rotation, but rather it's a cyclical thing. So then it's a net new QR code that just gets generated for every specific mint. But I have not seen a QR code. Maybe some of you folks seen it in the POAP itself, but I imagine that's kind of interesting to explore. Awesome. Well, there you go. Yeah. One thing I will quickly call out with regards to artwork is we love unique artwork. So feel free to get as creative as you would like and your imagination can take you, because that is part of a collectible. You want it to represent something meaningful for you at the end of the day. So thanks, Joel. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm also excited about the POAP project that you guys are all open to being part of. So very excited to get to know everybody over the next 2.5 weeks and kind of see, what are some really cool ideas that, bubble up from here.
All right, I think that puts us at time, but thank you very much, Nisita. And again, the POAP team can be reached in their own channels and also in HackFS in the Discord. So reach out. Always consider this the start of conversations and interactions and questioning. Good luck to everyone during the hackathon. And thank you very much, Nisita, for a great workshop.
Thanks, everybody.